We be funky.
We don't change our draw, so we
Change it.
Are you ready?
Yep.
The video opens with a band of four shown on stage of an auditorium. They introduce their first song, then begin to play their set. From left to right, the first member is Ed Huey. He's an older, bald, white man dressed in a Hawaiian black button-up shirt and black dress pants. He plays harmonica and sings for the group. The next member is John Litzenberg. He is an older white male dressed in a black button-up shirt and blue jeans and wears a black fedora. He plays the bass guitar and sings for the group. The next member is Sammy Nix, the drummer. He is an older, bald, white male dressed in gray shorts and a gray t-shirt and is wearing glasses. He sits behind the drums. The fourth member is Donnie Hyams. He's an older white male dressed in a black t-shirt and blue jeans. He's playing the guitar and sings for the group.
This first song we're going to do is a song called Deep Ellum Blues. It's an old blues song written about a neighborhood or a segment of Dallas that at one time was of pretty ill repute. I first heard this song on a Grateful Dead record. Ed heard it on a record that was released a long time before that. We do it a little bit differently than almost everybody else, but I like to think we put our own spin on it. Here we go. When that my mama, she was working on. Oh, sweet mama, daddy's got them people blues. He do. Oh, sweet mama, daddy's got them people blues. Why don't you go play something? Now we're going to turn the lead vocals on over to Ed for a minute.
It occurred to me while you were playing that song that we might...
In the year 2010, 2011, a strike struck the Continental Baking Company. Terror of terrors, they were going to stop making Twinkies. I grew up eating Twinkies, and now you can get them deep fried. So I thought, what would happen if somebody bought the last Twinkie? So this is a song I wrote in 2011.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Maybe it's true, I don't know. My grandma lived in the grocery store. The list was short and sweet. She was hungry for her favorite cake and ate the little Greenfield treat. I went to the bakery department. I looked upon every shelf. I even asked the manager where to find them, but he said, ain't none left. He said, somebody bought the last Twinkie. I said, what? None left, that's all me. No angel blue, Greenfield tree. You just don't make them no more. Now let me get this straight. You say, somebody bought the last Twinkie. He said, that's right. None left at the door. There's no angel blue, Greenfield tree. They just don't make them no more. Now look here. I don't know about you, but with me, my grandma's about this tall, my man, clean. You can't just say they have a problem, so I have to explain it to you. I broke the news to Grandma. A tear came to her eye. Now I can do without a hopeless Twinkie, but I hate to see my grandma cry. I told her somebody bought the last Twinkie. She said, what? None left at the store. There's no angel food, Greenfield tree. You know they just don't make them no more. She said, you mean somebody bought the last Twinkie? I said, that's right, man. None left at the store. There's no angel food, Greenfield tree. They just don't make them no more. Play me some brand new Donnie Hyams. Oh, know they just don't make them no more. I wanna know, did you buy the last 20? There's nothing left at the door. There's no angle food, Springfield Creek, you know they just don't make them no more. Worse than that, did you eat the last 20? There's nothing left at the door. There's no angle food, Springfield Creek, they just don't make them no more.
Dr. Shane Rasmussen interviews John Litzenberg. The two are sitting on a stage. Dr. Rasmussen, a white male with glasses, wears an orange plaid long-sleeve button-up shirt and black dress pants.
So I'm talking with John Litzenberg, who is the leader of Came Mutiny, which is a band that I am not sure how to describe because the music really is, I mean, you know, you play so many different genres and you play them well. And, you know, I mean, you play the Zydeco to the swamp pop to the Americana to the rhythm and blues to the blues itself and to, how would you describe what you're trying to do with Came Mutiny?
Well, to me, it's American music, and it really covers all genres. I mean, it's kind of like the music that I grew up listening to. And I try to pick songs based on songs that I like. And, you know, whenever I cover somebody else's song, I like to think, you know, here, I'm playing this for you, the person who wrote this song, so you know how great a song it is too. Because so often, you know, you don't get, I'm a songwriter myself, and so often you don't get that feedback. It's, oh, the artist did this, but these are really great songs, and that's what I'm trying to focus on. I mean, and, you know, as a singer, I think it's essential that if you're singing a song, it's got to mean something to you, or you don't sound authentic. You sound like you're putting on airs or whatever. It just doesn't sound true. And you know what they say, country music is 3 chords and the truth. Mm-hmm. Punk, kind of the same thing. It's the same 3 chords, just louder. But that's, you know, and I'm trying to communicate something. You know? So I pick songs that I think have a message that's worth saying and songs that are worth celebrating.
And why these gentlemen? Why did you choose these guys?
Well, it kind of started out, we were all playing for Hardwick Rivers, and there was, and Ed had just joined the band on harmonica, and he and I had talked about doing something that was more just us, and we actually have a duo that we, Snake Doctors, that we do just our own thing together. But there was a period of time when Hardwick was under the weather and not well and couldn't play the gigs that we were playing weekly. So we decided that we would try to keep that going until he came back, and we needed a different repertoire, we needed a different feel, and it kind of grew out of that. I mean, Donnie and Sammy and Ed have been playing, we have like 1,000 years of playing experience between the 4 of us. And we all were familiar with each other's styles, and we were going to be at that place every Thursday night. So why don't we make this work? And then when Hardwick came back, we decided, well, we can do this on our own elsewhere as well.
Well, I like the T-shirt, the real live music, you know, emblazoned on there on your Came Mutiny T-shirt. Because, you know, as you're listening, it almost sounds sometimes, you know, you're playing some of them are standards,
right?
But they sound like reinterpretations. You know, listening to Donnie's guitar, sometimes it reminded me. It seems strategic.
Yeah.
You know, he's playing fills, and then suddenly he's just revving up the dynamics of it in a way that you would not get on the safer vinyl on the compact disc.
Yeah.
So you really infuse it with that. The excitement and the organic moment of the live song. Yeah,
well, I think that to be effective, live music really there has to be an organic element. I mean, certainly, I've been playing music since I was 8 years old, and a lot of that was classical music. So there's only a certain amount of interpretation that you can do with a classical piece because that's just its nature. Jazz is certainly much more improvisational, and other genres like country and the blues, you have a little more leeway. But I mean, to me, if you're playing a song on stage and it's not important that it's you that's playing it, then why are you there? Why not just save your money and put a quarter in the jukebox? If that's all you want to hear is something that's not alive, something that you're not a part of the experience. Because live music is about co-creating that experience, the audience and the band. I mean, we can't do what we do, and the audience can't really walk away saying, wow, I was really part of something. I mean, maybe that's because a lot of my influence is, jam bands and long afternoons of, like when the Grateful Dead started out, Jerry Garcia said, we only know 3 songs, but we can play each one of them for 6 hours. It's kind of the same, that kind of vibe, like, let's just see where it's going to go. I mean, yeah, certainly there is some structure because you've got some structure in songs and you've got time constraints, but I think it's more exciting as musicians and certainly as an audience if you're open to the experience of seeing what will happen and having something grow out of it, and then there's a connection, you're communicating and you walk away with a larger group of people that are kind of on the same page as you are.
It definitely comes across. So in a sense, it's a reciprocal relationship.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You're playing to, you're playing with the audience in a sense.
They're an integral part of what we do.
So, 8 years old?
Yeah, I've been on stage since I was 8, so that's a little over 40 years now. I started out with violin lessons, and then played clarinet in the band, and piano as well. And my family was a musical tradition, kind of the German and Irish sides both contributed a part. On the German side, it was like everybody had to learn 3 instruments. My brothers and my sister, we all learned piano, we all learned a string instrument, we all learned a wind instrument. And from the Irish tradition, there's a long-standing tradition of the bard in Irish culture being the integrator and the collector and the memory of your culture. So I've always kind of felt that kinship. I've studied it more formally, but one of the things that's important is to absorb everything in your current culture and be able to relate it to the past, so that you can see the chain of how things develop. Obviously, people playing folk music today that are younger, they may play the same songs, but there's a different spirit, there's a different interpretation. I mean, the music has to evolve. It can't stay the same as it was, 1,000 years ago.
How has it evolved?
Well, I mean, obviously it's evolved because we're in a different kind of culture now. I mean, you can download albums now from the 30s and 40s that you were lucky to find at all at that time, or even own a record player. I mean, it used to be just the radio was where you heard classical music, jazz, a lot of folk music, live performances from like Carnegie Hall and the Ryman Theater in Nashville. That's where you heard music. And you didn't buy records, you bought sheet music and you learned how to play it on the piano or the guitar yourself, and you heard someone play it, sample it in a music store, and that's why you bought the sheet music. I don't think there's a big sheet music business anymore like there was, because it's so easy to go to the internet and download a video or a song and hear someone who recorded long before you were alive, that during their lifetime or even in my youth, there's no way that you could find like Bessie Smith's 3rd album. It just wasn't there. It's like old movies, the same thing. I mean, now that they've restored so many of those old movies, they've got whole channels devoted to it now, but you couldn't see these movies unless you were in the theater, and only like 5% of them ever made it to videotape.
Right.
So much of that culture was lost until the digital age, and I think that all the record companies that have all these albums in their vaults should just convert all of them to digital and make the ones that aren't selling available for 5-10 cents a piece. So at least they're out there and people can see the history and hear the history.
Yeah, I agree completely. I noticed that a lot of young people were having a lot of love for the retro, retro jazz.
Oh, yeah.
The jazz of the 20s and 30s and 40s. It seems to me that they're really, you can turn it on YouTube and they're playing this.
Well, and some of those records, like a lot of the records that Columbia was putting out for jazz in the 40s and the 50s, the way that they were recorded was so revolutionary. You can hear the breathing, you can hear the slide on the bass of the strings. It's engineered and produced so brilliantly that it sounds like you're in the room. And granted, ideally you would be in the room because music is really meant to be experienced live. It's, it loses something in the translation to just being a audio experience, because you feel the drum, you feel the thump of the bass, you hear, you cringe at the twanging, whatever it might be. But when you're in the room, particularly if you're in a intimate, small setting, which is where most music was intended to be heard, it was not intended to be heard in arenas with 100,000 of your closest friends. It was meant to be in an intimate setting where it didn't have to be so loud, where people would actually stop talking when the music was playing, because you absorb it by osmosis. And having to turn it up so loud that no one can have a conversation kind of defeats that purpose, because you're beating someone over the head, you're not communicating.
The music is another person in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
It becomes part of the conversation because it impacts that conversation.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and if it's and if it's balanced, I mean, when you listen to a band, you want the instruments in that conversation to be balanced. When you go to the rainforest, every bird singing at the same time sings in a specific register across the sound spectrum, so nobody's overlapping anybody else. It's moving from that. The 3 stages of development that Viktor Frankl identified. You move from dependence to independence, but independence is not the final goal. Interdependence is the goal. And love is not about freedom and independence, it's about putting someone else before yourself. It's about not codependence, but interdependence, about interreliance.
So music forms a community.
Oh, absolutely, and it really is a universal language, and for the most part, I mean, it's a very powerful language. Unfortunately, like Frank Zappa said, unfortunately, there have been 50 million songs written about love and getting along, and those are not the ones that people pick up on. Or absorb so much as the ones that are pointing out the problems. I mean, but some genres of music, they're really, really good at pointing out what's wrong, but they're not very good at offering solutions to those problems. And that's a whole huge topic to get into. But I mean, one of the responsibilities of a bard is to use words and music to heal. And that, I think, is, so much of the blues and country music, at least, how it used to be, folk music, is about getting people through the experience of life.
Yeah.
And, it's like that old saying, you have a ring that gets you through the good times and the bad times, and that ring says, "This too shall pass." The music helps you celebrate the joys, and it helps you understand and put the lows and the failures in perspective. So you see, yeah, we can talk about this, but at the same time, we understand that nobody said life was going to be a bowl of cherries or all sweet. Life is what it is. It goes on. You keep breathing or you don't. And what happens to you in the middle is the music, the soundtrack of your life.
Well, you've been playing music for a while.
Yes.
And music, as we discussed, can be a punishing and sometimes thankless industry, if you want to call it an industry.
Right. Well, certainly the industry part of it is pretty thankless.
So why do you keep on playing music?
There have been periods of my life where I have said, I need to take a break, and there was a period where I stopped playing for almost 10 years. At that same time, I was still writing poetry and lyrics and other things, but I just wasn't performing, and it really, to me, there's a certain chemistry that's involved. I mean, you really have to have the right environment, you have to have the right people that you're playing with, you have to kind of have a purpose for doing what you're doing. And it's like when I would write songs, and I've probably written about 3,000 at this point, which means I've written 100 that are okay and probably 6 that are great.
That's pretty good for anybody.
Yeah, that's
a good ratio for
that's
anybody.
a good ratio to think of. I mean, if you want to, it takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of trial and error, and it takes a lot of playing with people who are better than you, who are willing to tolerate your mistakes as you absorb kind of what they know. I mean, that's always been a big thing in the jazz tradition. You go to your first jam session, you probably suck. But hopefully if you keep going, you get better. I keep going because I don't know whether it's my nature or whether it's my education or the background or whatever it is, I feel that I have a need to communicate something. I mean, that message may change. I mean, like Muhammad Ali said, if you're thinking and looking at the world the same way you did at 50 as you did at 20, you've wasted 30 years of your life. You have to evolve. You have to look at things differently. I mean, and certainly as I've gotten older, there are different physical problems. There's different challenges with getting along with people. The youth of America is constantly changing, and every generation says that their children are going to pot, but who raised them? Yeah. There's a connection there that we're failing to make, and I'm trying to stay connected to the world and not want to go off to a hermitage and just sit in a cave and stare at the wall. Right. What's playing on the wall tonight. I want to. I think we all need to communicate. We need to share experience, and diversity of experience is what makes us larger people. I mean, there was somebody said that if you take a look at a paper heart and you tear it, the only way that it gets bigger is if you keep wadding more tape on it. It doesn't get bigger just on its own. You have to go through the heartache. You have to experience life as it is, with not necessarily any expectations that it's going to be good or bad, but it's something to live through and something to grow and learn from. Or why are you here? So I keep learning. I keep trying to connect to people. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, in closing, what advice would you give to the young musicians today?
Listen to everything. Don't ever stop listening. And don't ever say, when I was studying music, one of the professors said, when someone asks you what kind of music you play, the good answer is, I play beautiful music. It doesn't matter what it is. It's music, right? I mean, that's its purpose. I mean, it exists for a reason, and maybe you're the reason that it exists. But there's something that you need to do with it.
Don't pigeonhole.
Like John Lee Hooker said, it's in him and it's got to come out.
Right.
But if it's got to come out for a reason, one would hope.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor speaking with you.
Thank you.
All right.
That's it.